Welcome once again. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk on 92.5 WLSD. The Vault on this Friday night. Can you tell? Do you know the movie? Now, I'm guessing you may not know the movie from this particular piece of opening soundtrack. Nevertheless, we're going to dive into the 2005 horror movie, House of Wax. Now, myself, in addition to many other people, have stated that House of Wax is an underrated gem. It is something that was, upon release, it was kind of mocked in some respect due to the inclusion of Paris Hilton. And we're going to dive in tonight and come to terms and discover within ourselves what we think of this movie, House of Wax. Before we get into that, go to our social media pages. That would be the Facebook page, the YouTube page, the Spotify page, and TikTok. So please go tops the Other People Show, and you can go check out all the past episodes. In addition to that, you can go to the WAXM webpage and visit and listen to a little The Dark Place, which I do a live broadcast on Wednesdays, Facebook. So we highlight in research, I guess, and talk about a killer, not necessarily a serial killer, but a killer, every Wednesday night. Now, I'm really excited to get into this movie tonight. And the reason being is because, as a lot of these movies, I grew up in, and am still growing up with the love of cinema, with the love of being sucked in to a story, maybe in another place, other characters involved, and something that can get me wrapped into that, take me out of that everyday life that we're living now, which is what I try to do with the shows as well. But getting back into the House of Wax, it is about a group of teens that are unwittingly stranded near a strange wax museum. And soon, very soon, must fight to survive and to keep from becoming an exhibit themselves. So if you haven't heard of this gem of a movie, it's House of Wax. It's got Chad Michael Murray, Paris Hilton, Alicia Cuthbert, Jared Padalecki, and Robert Richard. It came out in 2005, directed by Jaime Collet Sierra, who was weird. It was kind of weird for me to learn in doing research upon this episode, is that the director has gathered quite a number of credits. He directed the very good psychological horror movie Orphan, The Shallows, and he had a string of Liam Neeson and The Rock starring movies. Unknown with Liam Neeson, Nonstop, Run All Night, The Commuter, and with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, Jungle Cruise, and Black Adam. But House of Wax was his very first film back in 2005. Now, I think last week I mentioned a little bit about this film, is that Warner Brothers at the time had developed, part of a production company called Dark Castle Entertainment. And Dark Castle Entertainment each year was going to put out a brand new movie. They put out movies like Gothica. Let's see what else they put out. The Fog. Well, actually, not The Fog. They put out, House on Haunted Hill, 13 Ghosts, Ghost Ship, Gothica, and House of Wax as of the release of this. There's been more since then, but originally, but at the time of House of Wax, those were the movies. And as you can tell from some of these other movies, they were a lot of remakes. House on Haunted Hill was a remake. House of Wax is actually a remake, although other than the basic plot and the title, they don't share much in common. You've got 13 Ghosts, which I do not think is a remake. And then you've got Ghost Ship, which is a loosely veiled remake of a earlier 70s movie. And then you've got the Halle Berry, Robert Downey Jr. movie, Gothika. So those were a couple of the movies that Dark Castle Entertainment produced at that time. Now, the budget of House of Wax was a cool $40 million. And when you actually watch this film, you can tell where the money went. There is very little CGI. It's all practical effects. The town was actually constructed for this movie. The actual House of Wax was made of wax. So it was indeed a real House of Wax that they had during this movie. It only made $32.3 million in America, and worldwide it made $68 million. Usually the studios get half of that back. So it basically broke even within the theatrical release back in 2005, and with video and DVD and Blu-ray sales, as far as in addition to selling to like TBS, TNT, whoever bought it. House of Wax was a profitable movie as far as financially going. But critically, it wasn't so popular. It only had a 27% positive or rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb only has it at a 5.4, and the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes was only 43%. However, time and time again, to be honest with you, ever since this movie ever came out, there has been, people have told me, have you seen House of Wax? House of Wax is a really good movie. When it was brought up last week that I was going to do House of Wax this week, I got several messages, a couple people throughout my private life that I see on a regular basis. That's a great movie. I'm glad you're going to do that. I'm going to tune in to listen. So I do appreciate it, and I think a lot of others do as well, although it's not really reflected upon the IMDb score, the audience rating, or Rotten Tomatoes. So that is a little bit puzzling, but it is what it is. So we'll get into a little bit of facts about the House of Wax. Facts about wax. House of Wax. So Paris Hilton and Jared Padalecki, both of them appeared together in an episode of Supernatural. And the episode that she happened to guest star on centered around a wax museum, and it even referenced this movie within the show. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, I've never really watched the movie, the TV show Supernatural, but I know it's one of the longest running shows. I think it's wrapped up maybe a year or two ago, but it had a good run of maybe 17 or 18 years and seasons, and so I found that was kind of a cool thing to Paris to have kind of guest starred on that and centered it around a very similar thing, which the movie she also starred in. Speaking of Paris Hilton. Paris was the first person cast in the film, and the cast was built around her. Now, Paris Hilton, if you go back and think, she had whatever show she was on, The Simple Life, I think was what it was, and her and Nicole Richie were going around and saying, "That's hot, all right." So she wasn't especially liked as far as general audiences go, and I think it was due to the fact that she was, kind of seen as a little bit of a ditz, a dimwit, and not anyone of any substance. She was known for that, I guess the tape that was leaked and came out. So Paris Hilton was known but it wasn't like she was a. She was more of like, wow, this is going to be Paris. This was actually Paris's second movie, but her first theatrical major movie. So I guess they were trying to like build word of mouth around that. But they did get the cast at the time, a good solid cast. You have Chad Michael Murray. He was in One Tree Hill and several other kind of shows at the time. The same thing with Jared Padalecki. And then you've got Paris Hilton, which we just now discussed. But then you've got Alicia Cuthbert. Now, you may not remember Alicia Cuthbert right off. She had a few. She was Jack Bauer's daughter on 24, the show 24. She was his daughter, and I think she was on 8 episodes. And she was trying to transition at the time into I don't want to say a leading lady, but a theatrical star, a theatrical actress. So she had a few smaller roles in several successful movies. She was in the Will Ferrell movie Old School, if you remember that. She's only, I think, in a couple of scenes, but she's one of the girls. After they first have a big party at the frat house, she is one of the girls that wakes up there. I guess with Luke Wilson is who I'm guessing. It's been a minute since I've seen Old School. So she had that, and then she was in a movie called The Girl Next Door, which actually came right before this, I believe. And they were trying to springboard her into like maybe a leading lady, and often leading actresses, and actually even men as well. They will start off in a lower budgeted horror movie and trying to build, because horror movies often attract the same certain a certain crowd. They're typically profitable, and they often lead to either more horror movies. You might get stuck in that genre, or it could lead to bigger and better box office potential movies. So that was kind of like what Alicia Cuthbert was trying to go for at the time. Now, as I said, Paris was the first to be cast in the film, and the cast was built around her. But Alicia Cuthbert, who is typically a blonde, she dyed her hair darker, so it wouldn't conflict with Paris's golden, blonde locks. So often, and I know this happens occasionally, but if you go back and you look in a lot of horror movies, a lot of the women or the females in the movie do not share the same hair type, hair color, especially if it's the leading characters. They often will be, maybe a blonde brunette, but you will rarely ever have, 2 brunettes or 2 blondes that are, co-leading. It'll usually be one or the other. And that's kind of how it was in this one. So we have, there was quite a few interesting things that I found out about this movie that I didn't know beforehand. And Brian Van Holt, and he plays the role of Bo and Vincent, the twins in the movie. He actually played both roles in the movie as well. If you've seen the movie, Bo is more of what you think is the more sane of the twin brothers, and then you've got Vincent, who had a birth deformity, and his face is deformed. But I didn't know that Brian Van Holt played both roles. The film takes place in Louisiana, but it was shot in Australia because it is quite, even to this day, it is cheaper and less expensive for a Hollywood movie to film in Australia rather than to film right here on the streets of America. So what that tells me is that they should probably get it to the point where let's make it a little bit cheaper so we can film things here, bring work here. But that's just me. I just think with logic. As I mentioned earlier, very few visual effects were used in this movie. They're all practical effects. The house is made of thick wax. The dead bodies that were waxed were dead bodies of people that they turned into wax. Now, this is a little side note, and this isn't anything that anyone knows, but I'm pulling back the curtain right now and just going to let you know that a relative of mine, if you look clearly at 1 hour and 42 minutes in, you can see her within the like the walls of wax. Now, she was not in the movie on purpose. She had passed away, and they just happened to, I guess, dig up her corpse and put it in there for effect. But I don't know if anyone knows that, but that happened. So just keep a look out at that moment. This was one of 4 horror remakes in 2005. We had the Fog, we had House of Wax, Amityville Horror, and the movie Chaos. So this was one of 4. And I've only seen the Fog that one time, and it does seem kind of foggy in memory. But I do remember not liking it. And I do remember thinking, this movie, it's a one and done. You don't need to see it again and again. And the older that I'm getting, I'm learning, well, not really learning, but realizing that I've seen a lot of movies. I wouldn't want to say this for everyone out there, but I would assume that I've probably seen more movies than the listener right now, or the watcher, which is a decent movie with Keanu Reeves and James Spader, Marissa Tomei. I digress. But this is a movie, House of Wax, that you can enjoy and can watch over and over again, and it's very enjoyable. So let's get into the plot and the story. So the plot is pretty basic. You've got several teenagers. They're on their way to a college football game in Louisiana. So they're trying to get there. They're in 2 different vehicles. And they're trying to get there quickly. So obviously, what do? They don't follow the interstate. They get on their GPS and they find a back way to get there. Never a good sign. Never a good sign. And I'm just wondering if people in everyday life make this kind of decision. You're going to the game, whether it be in this movie it's a football game, but regardless of what it is, you want to get there quick. Speaking logically, you're going to leave with enough time to get there. But these kids in the movie, they don't have tickets to the big game. So therefore, taking the GPS, going to try to avoid traffic, going to try to get to the game, and what do? They make a couple of idiotic decisions. And as you know, when you're in a horror movie, you have to make idiotic and ridiculous decisions. Because if you don't make these decisions, you've got no movie. You've got no plot moving forward if you make the right decisions early on. Now, thankfully for the viewer, which is us, these cast of characters continuously make the wrong decisions. And they end up where they end up. And that's that. All right, good night. Just kidding. So, as they're going to the game, taking the back road, it's getting night, so they decide to stop, stop in this wooded area, I guess. And they put up a tent. They stay there. And that's one of the things that I'm a little bit aggravated about within the movie. There's zero reason that they need to stop. Now, when I'm traveling, I'm not one. I want to get there as quickly as possible. I don't need to stop and eat. I don't even need to eat on the way. I can go 12, 14, 16, 24, 48, 72, 2 weeks, a month, a year without eating. That's not the problem. The problem is I want to get there as quickly as possible with doing the speed limit within safe time and planning accordingly. These kids did not do any of the legwork. None of it. But that's okay. So they stop setting up the tent, and then they encounter a weird, just a weird truck that just happens to pull up. And as the truck pulls up, it's shining its lights on them, and it's just pretty much just staring at them. So Chad Michael Murray's character picks up a bottle, throws it, and it hits the headlight, and they drive off. Now, a side note there: if you look at that scene closely, you will notice that when he throws the bottle and it hits the glass, if you watch super close, because it's a quick scene, the bottle doesn't break because it was a breakaway plastic, kind of a breakaway glass bottle, but it happened not to break. But the sound is still there. And if you don't look for it, you won't notice it. You probably won't notice, because I didn't actually notice it until this past time, and this is probably about the, if I had to guess, this is probably about the 9th or 10th time I've seen House of Wax. So that's one mistake that they make, is that they use the GPS to try to get there faster. And that's not going to help. It's never going to help. It's always going to hurt. Another thing that they do is, after Bo, we learn this is Bo, comes with the truck. They one of the Jared, I forget his character's name, but Jared, his I think his water heater or something goes out in his vehicle. So they're like, well, we can all ride together. And he's like, I'm not leaving my car here. You all go ahead. So what they decide to do is they're going to go into town. There's a little town that they learn about. This guy comes there. Well, actually, it comes there because they start. I think Alicia Cuthbert's out trying to find a place to use the bathroom in the woods, and she smells this horrible odor. And as she's inching closely to where it's coming from, she's seeing, these just look like roadkill, just a pile of roadkill. You've got deer, you've got bear, you've got elk, you've got rodent, you've got Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. All of them are in that roadkill. It's stinking. And then she actually falls off this little hill into it, starts screaming. The rest of the group comes there, and then this guy pulls in, and he, pretty much throws some more roadkill onto the pile. Now, they talk to him a little bit. They tell them, we need a part. He says there's a town about 15 miles up here. I'll be glad to give you a ride. And he's a sketchy looking character, so I don't want it to set up like, this is Mr. Rogers giving these teens a ride, because it isn't. It's a scary looking character. He's missing a few teeth. He's got that, one of those could be good, could be bad kind of vibes. If you saw this guy in real life, you would think, is this guy real? Is this a real person? Or is he just trying to get me on his good side? Regardless, they take the ride into town. So you learn that the town, as you see, is a small town, almost like Pound, Virginia, if you've been there. The town itself reminds me a little bit of that town, except at the very end of the town is a house of wax, and it's a kind of like a museum, and you can clearly see it. I'm looking at a picture of it right now, and it just makes me tremble thinking about it. So they're walking through town, and they come up on the church. They hear a church service, and they go to the gas station first to try to find someone to get the part. Service stations, no one's there. No one is actually in the town that they can find. They go to this, happen to walk by a chapel. You can hear the organ playing, a funeral or something's going on inside. And there they meet Bo for actually the second time, but they only think it's the first time. So Bo says, yeah, listen, go ahead. I'm going to go change, go back to the garage. I'll get the part that you need. So he gets the part that they need. Or does he? They do get it. But he's like, well, it must be up at the house. So let's go up to the house. So Alicia Cuthbert, Jared Padalecki, They're going on up there with Bo. And then that's where basically shenanigans ensue, is I guess you could say. Because then Elisha Cuthbert stays in her vehicle. Jared, we'll just call him Padalecki. He goes inside with Bo. And he's pretty much taken captive. So when he's taken captive, he's taken in. His eyebrows, all of his hair is waxed off of him. He's hairless. He's put into this contraption that sprays wax on him, and he's starting to dry slowly over a little bit of the movie and become a wax figure. Just like, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. We only have an hour show. But from this point on, it's pretty much they learn, Chad Michael Murray, Elisha Cuthbert, their brother and sister in the movie, they learn that this town is not like your normal town. There's no one in this town. The people in the church are wax figures, like the people in the House of Wax. The people in the cinema are wax figures. The town is rigged so every once in a while it looks like the window opens, like if someone's inside opening a curtain to peep out. But it's a wax figure. So a lot of these strange and creepy things are happening. So basically that's the plot, a little bit of the plot in the story. Now we have the characters. Now the characters, they're Elisha Cuthbert and Chad Michael Murray. They're good in their respective roles. But when watching this, and this has been brought up a couple times, and it's also brought up on the facts section on IMDb, is that sometimes it feels from their looks or their dialogue that this could be an incestuous relationship. No, it isn't. But it's often said that they share too much chemistry, and therefore Jared Padalecki should have been cast as her brother, and Chad Michael Murray should have been cast as her boyfriend in the movie. Although her boyfriend, Wade, does meet his demise horrifically. I think his death in the movie, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, is probably the most gruesome death of any of them in the movie. Because he is sitting there, he's so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but later in the movie, a few more friends come from the group, and they're like, "Wow, look at this weird wax person." And then he said, "Hey Wade, what are you doing? This looks just like Wade." And then he realizes that Wade is encapsulated within this wax, and he starts to try to pick the wax off of Wade's face, but it's tearing into his skin, and then he accidentally rips the skin off. And you can see Wade sitting there, tears coming out of his eyes, because Wade is still alive while he's sitting there waxed. He can just think of this. Just think of this, really. Just think of this. Unless you're driving, and if you're driving, just pull to the side of the road and close your eyes. So you've just been waxed. Hot, scalding wax. You're in some kind of a weird house of wax as now an exhibit, sitting there, unable to move. You can blink, but you can't do anything. You can breathe maybe. And then someone is trying to pick at your wax to scrape it off of you, and they're scraping into your skin. Ow! Ah! But the thing is, Wade can't say anything. It's like when you're in going in a surgery or under the knife or something. That's exactly the sound that I think it would be like. But you're going under the knife, but yet you can feel everything, but you can't move or say anything. Like a paralysis of some sort. I digress. But I do think Wade's death is one of the worst deaths in the movie. And it's really never acknowledged unless you actually think about it and say, during this whole last act of the movie, Wade is sitting there. He's probably bled out at this point, but he gets a horrific death. So the characters, the characters for the most part, there's nothing, that spectacular about any of the characters individually. They all play their roles like they're supposed to. There's, I will say this, Chad Michael Murray and Alicia Cuthbert, they do a good job. Jared Padalecki, I do think that, I don't know, he does a good Wade, I guess. Wade is supposed to be this, maybe this country guy, and he's from Florida, I guess, and they're wanting, I guess his girlfriend Alicia is wanting him to come to New York. So there's a few jokes they make of him about going to New York where there's buildings as tall as the sky. And they kind of make fun of him a little bit through that, but there's just a little lighthearted ribbing. You've got the goofy character, he dresses up in, I think later on they get him to put on some of the girls' clothes and act silly. And, he's got the glasses on, much like I do now. I've got these black glasses because the light hurts my eyes. But, you've got that goofy guy in there, and then you've got the heartthrob, and then you've got a couple of heartthrobs, I guess, and then you've got the eye candy, I guess, with Alicia Cuthbert and Paris. And I will say this, I was never really a big Paris Hilton fan, but Paris Hilton does a good job in this movie. She's only given a few lines, and you're saying, well, that's because she can't act. She does a good job in this movie. If I were to cast a horror movie in the future, and I'm able to cast her as this type of a character, I would cast her again because she does a fair job. She looks good on screen, and she looks frightened, and she does a good job. So I can't put her down for just being Paris Hilton. That would just not be the right thing to do. However, when I did see this, when Terry and I saw this at the midnight showing, when it first came out, when she died and met her demise, the audience did clap, and they seemed pleased. But I always thought that Paris did a very serviceable job in this movie as well. So, favorite or least favorite scene? That's very interesting to talk about, because I don't know if I have I do have a least favorite scene, and I don't know if it's a scene per se, more so than. So this if you know the show from the past, horror movies especially, should be a certain time. You would rather have someone walking out of your movie stating, I wish that movie had been longer, than stating, I really like that movie, but it was just a little too long. So this movie clocks in at about an hour and 50 or an hour and 55 minutes. And I think that is a little bit too long, because there's a couple spots, I guess in the second, maybe the first and second act together, that they could be trimmed down, and you could probably, there's some scenes at the camp, when they camp out, that I think could be taken out a little bit. Probably, 7 or 8 minutes there, but I think you could probably trim down about 15 minutes off of the movie. The opening, you've got the babies. It's kind of a cool thing because it sets up the audience to think that Bo, because when it shows the high chairs at the very beginning of the movie, it shows one of the high chairs is just like a normal high chair, but the other one is, you can tell the baby is a problem, and the baby is a problem at the very beginning, and they abuse the baby by strapping his legs with I guess a restraint, and I think they're using duct tape on him as well. So there's no wonder that Bo is a complete and utter psychopath, because he was brought up that way from birth. And Vincent, the one that happens to be deformed, is the more well-behaved of the two. So that's kind of an interesting aspect as well. A favorite scene of the movie, I think when they first arrive in the town and they're walking around, you kind of get a sense of the town, of what it looks like, and you kind of get like you're right in that town. And you can relate to that and understand it more when coming from a smaller town. Because when coming from that smaller town, you can say, wow, I know someone that lives in a place that looks like that. I know people that, kind of also look like some of these people. Some of these people could actually be wax people in real life. You don't really know, I guess, do you? I'm not sure. But yeah, as far as favorite scenes, I mean, I do like the third act of the movie is really strong. It doesn't let you down. It builds, and it kind of puts you into a claustrophobic scenario as well, as they're trying to escape the House of Wax. So they have to kind of go under the floorboard of the house that kind of leads down to, I guess, like this basement type area where the workshop seems to be for Vincent. So what they've done is, over the years, the town's been bankrupt and no one has lived there for, at least 10 to 15 years. So what Bo and Vincent have been doing is they'll get, people off of the highway and, murder them, take their vehicle, their stuff like that, and then turn them into a piece of art, or a wax person. So that's kind of what they've been doing this time. So therefore, as Chad and Alicia, they're going through, and it leads back down to into the House of Wax. So it's a very good climax, a very good third act, and a lot of horror movies fall apart in this last act, but this movie doesn't. And up until the very last, the very last scene, not the very last scene of the movie, but the very last scene of this, I guess, this action sequence that takes place as they're trying to escape, the house does catch on fire. And a lot of that, like I said, was practical effects. But you can tell at the very, very end of that sequence that the flames just don't seem real. But I can't really fault that. At the time, 2005, working on a $40 million budget, you can't really be burning a House of Wax down. Now, when they did try to get through the goop, that was the wax. They were actually trying to do that in real life. And I think it would be a fun movie to be in. I've made a couple of horror movies and a short film, horror short film, and the ones that I have been in, they've been a blast. I was a zombie. This is a side note. Back in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, back in I guess it was maybe 2008, 2010, and whenever we were there, we Deadlands 2 Trapped. There's a scene. I'm actually in the trailer, but it's basically these people get trapped inside of a movie theater. Some kind of a zombie outbreak happens, and zombies are after them. That's basically the premise. But it was a fun thing, and I can't even remember why I originally started going on to that. So I do apologize for that. The score and the music, we've been listening to the score and the music throughout the episode. So this is a little bit of the score. And I think it's very fitting, like I've mentioned every time, multiple times. The score, and the actual music bed that is playing throughout, especially in a horror movie, in all movies really, but especially in a horror movie, it's it adds so much to it. Just like with me talking, when I'm talking and there's a music bed under me, it adds to what I'm saying rather than just talking without the music bed at all. Now they both work fine, but it just sounds a little bit better with the music. And the same goes for House of Wax. In addition to all the movies that we've pretty much watched so far, pretty much every movie that we've covered, excluding Death Becomes Her, has a tremendous score. And I'm not saying that Death Becomes Her doesn't, but I'm saying that Death Becomes Her didn't have the jump out score that you would expect from a Robert Zemeckis movie and that type of a movie. It wasn't memorable like some of these others. And House of Wax does have a very memorable score. And I think it is, there's a theme. I wish I could find the exact theme. I think we've already played a little bit of the theme. But, it's kind of the theme song that lingers throughout the movie. And it's a nice piece of cinema. And it's by Stanley Tai. He is the one that did the score for House of Wax. Let's listen to a little bit more of that for a second. So yeah, really good score on the House of Wax. Originality. Now, like I said, I had never seen the original House of Wax. It does have Vincent Price in it, but it's not really. I guess it is something pretty original because I haven't seen a lot of movies with this kind of premise. I haven't seen a lot of movies that kind of build upon the fact that the subjects are turning these people into wax, because that's what they're doing. So that's pretty much I guess Carbonite, you could think of that from Star Wars movies. But as far as turning someone into wax in a major Hollywood movie, that's a pretty original thing that had been done, and a pricey one, a very pricey one as well. So let's come to the final conclusion. Would you recommend House of Wax? Why or why not? The intensity is building. You want to know. So the answer is, yeah. I would definitely recommend House of Wax. It is a movie that, there's some very gross parts in the movie. For a horror movie, it's nothing super spectacular as far as the cast of characters, but it does a good job. Everyone does a solid job. I don't think I would recast anything. The story is original, and it's very enjoyable. Like I said earlier, the only thing that I would possibly do is I would cut, maybe 7 to 8 minutes of the film, because this is not the kind of film that you want to drag on. This is the kind of film that it hits the plot points and it moves forward. And that's what you expect when going in. Does it really have any twists or turns? I think that they were trying to go for a twist and turn at the beginning, like I stated with the high chairs with Bo and Vincent. That wasn't really necessary, so that was probably a good 4 to 5 minutes that really could have been cut out. You don't really need to know that. You could actually have started the movie with just showing clippings of Bo and Vincent's parents, because his father was a doctor who actually, and I can't believe I forgot this, but his doctor removed Bo and Vincent from one another because they were Siamese twins. And therefore, that's the reason that Vincent is deformed, because his father actually had removed them. And then his mother, I forget exactly, but she also turned into some kind of a recluse as well. So they could have started the movie off, just showing some clippings of that, and that would kind of get everyone up to speed about who these characters are. But they chose to go with the high chair route, which was fine. Which was fine. I don't think I would have done it that way. So another thing about House of Wax is what I've thought one of the reasons it's not as financially successful at the time is because they released House of Wax at a very crowded summertime, which I often wondered why they did that. The only thing that I can really think is that they really believed in the product. And they really thought this movie could break out because often they'll have counter programming in the summer. So you'll often see they'll have, maybe a blockbuster, and then they'll have that also released by like maybe a romantic comedy or a child's film, or you'll have a horror movie come out and then something completely opposite to try to give the marketplace more diversity among it. So I'm going to check out really quick here what was coming out at the time that House of Wax was out, because it was a very crowded summer that year. And if you think of 2005, that was probably episode 3 of Star Wars that was out, and many, many, many other things. So let's take a gander here just to see some of the titles that were out. So we had House of Wax. It opened up number 2, May 6th, the weekend of May 6th through 8th, 2005. We have Kingdom of Heaven, House of Wax, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Sahara, the Amityville Horror Movie, Fever Pitch, Robots, Miss Congeniality 2. So I was actually mistaken. I can understand why they did open it up at this time, because a lot of these films, they none of those broke out really, and I guess they were hoping that House of Wax would break out. But then you had the following week, you had Monster-in-Law with J-Lo, Kicking and Screaming, which is a terrible, terrible Will Ferrell movie. You've got the Jet Li movie Unleashed also. And then just after that, there's just more and more. Star Wars Episode 3. And then by the time, that came out, it was just, one thing after another. So really, House of Wax didn't really have that much of a chance, considering all the competition it had at the time. They should have released it at the very beginning of Halloween, because you don't want to release it right around Halloween, because by the week or two after Halloween, people's in the mood for the holidays, the Thanksgiving movies, and things like that. So that's how that went. But yeah, House of Wax, I would say you should definitely go check out House of Wax. I think it'll be, you can probably rent it. You can find it on the Fire Stick. I think it was maybe on HBO Max or Amazon Prime. I'm not sure exactly. But give that one a watch, because I'm very interested in what some of you all have to say about it. Because it's been, everyone that I've mentioned it to, or that has heard from last week, it's been positive. A positive word of mouth. That's a great movie. That's a good movie. I love that movie. But yet, judging by, like we said earlier in the show, the IMDb, the audience reaction, Rotten Tomatoes, this or that, it didn't seem as well liked as people are telling me. But the research that I've gathered has said this has actually garnered a cult following as far as horror movies go. So yeah, that was House of Wax. It's I'm glad. Now, what was funny was last week coming in, wasn't really 100% sure what the next movie would be. There was a couple floating around in my mind. I'd been trying not to do quite as dark of movies that I had been doing. I tend to gravitate more toward that, so I thought I would throw in a fun horror movie. So I think next week we're going to do one of two movies. We're going to do the movie Dick Tracy, or we're going to do Eyes Wide Shut. So two completely different types of movies, but it's going to be one or the other, Dick Tracy or Eyes Wide Shut. I haven't seen Dick Tracy in quite some time, and Eyes Wide Shut is one I tend to watch, probably once a year, I guess. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in to Real Talk. Make sure you tune in and go check out the all the social media stuff, the YouTube page, Spotify, TikTok, Facebook. Please do that. Please like and subscribe. Also, check out a lot of things on the sister station, WAXM. A lot of good programming is going on over there. And if you go on their website, you can check out streaming on their SoundCloud page is The Dark Place, which is also streaming on Spotify and YouTube. So, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will be back in just a few moments.